a lot of the population, that is 75% of the population in the country today. Now, Michael Oyamo, Program Manager, Power 254, Collins Oluoch, lawyer and youth leader. Kenya is a very youthful country. Those aged between 18 and 35 make up approximately 75% of Kenya's population. Unfortunately, a large percentage of this population is unemployed and feel marginalized in terms of access to opportunities, representation and participation. There are about 500,000 youth who graduate from various tertiary institutions yearly, ready to enter the job market every year. However, due to the slow economic growth, corruption, nepotism, and a demand for experience by potential employers, 75% remain unemployed. Friday, 15th of July, we observed the World Youth Skills Day. But even as this is observed, what are the issues affecting the Kenyan youth? Are they involved in formulating policies that affect them? Or are they the leaders of tomorrow despite being the majority in this great nation today? We talk about the youth agenda. And I will be talking to Michael Owino, Program Manager, Power 254, and Collins Oluoch, an advocate of the High Court and a youth leader. Gentlemen, karibuni sana.
Thank you.
The Kenyan youth forms 75% of the total population. But as I've stated before, are we involved in policy making? You will go first.
Good question, and thanks, Dennis, for having us. I think this is a very, very good discussion we need to have, especially since we're going to the next election in a few days' time. So it gives us an opportunity to also reflect on the kind of choices we're going to make on 9th of August. But to answer your question, I will say no. No, because when you look at the policies that the government has put in place, we have policies that look youth-friendly, but in reality, in terms of implementation, that's where the problem is. There are policies that advance youth, the youth agenda, yes. But when it comes to implementation of these policies, this is where I think we have a problem. But beyond just having policies, some of these policies are not, where we are, we should be way much ahead. I would wish to have more policies that are youth-friendly, but beyond just having policies and laws and programs, just have tangible programs in place to ensure that the youth agenda succeeds.
Now, Collins, you are an advocate of the High Court. It is something that, and also a youth leader, something you deal with every day with regards to policies, laws that have been put in place to address matters youth. Where is the breakdown when it comes to, first of all, having policies that clearly captures the youth agenda, and also when it comes to implementing the current policies? Where do we fail as a country?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. For me, I think, I just to buttress what my colleague has talked about, and you've mentioned 75% of our population is comprised of young people. And then out of that 75%, 29% is of the economic bracket, like what you say, from 18 to 34 years. That is, they make the 29%. If you look at the budget that was passed, the 3.3 trillion budget, 13 billion was allocated to National Youth Service. 175 million was allocated to Youth Enterprise Fund, 120 million was allocated to Youth Employment Fund, and then I think 170 million was allocated to Women Enterprise Fund. If you look at the kind of implementation of those funds vis-a-vis how the young people, their lives have transformed, therein lies the lacuna, therein lies the problem. The problem is tracing the young people and see to it that they've benefited from these policies. When the Jubilee government took over, they had an AGPO policy, whereby they were keen to see to it that 30% of procurement goes to young people, goes to persons living with disability, and goes to women. But in every time you hear the Jubilee government giving its scorecard, they don't mention the kind of turnover. They don't mention how many young people have been absorbed to jobs. They'll talk about the roads that have been tarmacked. They'll talk about the electrification program, but they don't come out to talk about the young people that have been that have benefited from their programs. Why? Because unemployment of the young people is something that the politicians celebrate. If you see, 50,000 slots are the only ones. They're the only slots available in the corporate market. On the civil service, if you look at the KDF, police, all the civil service, it's only 700,000. If you look at our population as young people and talking about us being employed, then it beats logic. If we're just talking merely about 220,000, but sorry, 1.2 million. But if you translate that to young people having creative ideas, young people being innovative, young people being in an environment that they can be able to create, that they are in is the problem. Because we have a lot of taxation, we have a lot of requirements that young people have to, funding problems, taxation problems, permit problems. A lot of those problems are not being addressed in these policies. Michael,
well, we talk about the policies, like he's rightfully said. There are programs that have been put in place to ensure that the youth get to further their lives, become respectable people in the society. But every day in your programs, 254, you find the youth will always complain in terms of getting access to these funds. The youth fund becomes a problem because of the requirements that they're supposed to have. To start with, you're asked for collateral. Do you have it? But now, when you talk to them, what exactly do the youth want? You know, because it is one thing for policymakers to think that this is what the youth want, but from the horse's mouth, when they talk to you, sisi kama vijana tunataka ABCD, ni nini wanataka?
Actually, it's very, very simple. What the youth of Kenya are not asking for much. All they're asking for is an environment that is conducive for them to do business. If we are able to crack that, I mean, we will solve almost...
Where conducive environment to do business is
yes,
what exactly?
I think Collins had alluded to it. One is the taxation regime. I mean, like just recently, was it last year that the government introduced the digital service tax? During COVID, the young people came up with very innovative ideas and started making use of technology, you know, to earn income. And the government saw an opportunity to tax, to get taxes. This is a new industry that is just developing. How do you start taxing and at a very huge percentage, something that is just developing, instead of giving it room to grow, permeate the society, and then now you can introduce the taxation. Now we have a digital service tax. We did fight back a little bit. Initially they wanted 5%, now they've reduced it to 1.5. So that is what the taxation regime is very, very unfriendly. You open a small business and before long, even before you even settle, your very first month, watu wakanje washafika. You remember the story of this lady who operated a pub in Kitengela, was it Kitengela? Yeah. And she had to close it because of the legal tax plus the illegal tax. Yeah. The illegal tax where the police, and this is very, very heartbreaking for me, because when I see young people go out and, you know, apply themselves and open businesses, it's not easy to open a business in Kenya. And then you find people who already paid by government, police officers, they come and collect 100 shillings, then they go and tell another group, they'll come again. So the tax regime, I'm talking about the taxes levied and the illegal ones as well, plus also the registration requirements. A lot of young people, especially the ones who want to venture into medium enterprises, small and medium enterprises, the ones who want to set up sort of a factory, one of the biggest challenges they face is the requirements by KRA, and especially KRA, because they say you need to have a warehouse. Some things are not, you know, we still have that backward thinking that a factory has to operate in a physical building. Yeah. We are in the information technology age. I can operate a multi-million company in my house, but the requirement, they will tell you to have, for me to operate a small micro enterprise, I need to have a warehouse.
So pretty much if you want to start selling popcorn, you need
definitely. You see, so those are some of the things that are a bit, hold us back, hold back youth creativity. So if the government, I'm hoping the new government that will come in on 10th of August, will be a little bit open to exploring new ways of working with young people and building their businesses.
Now, when we talk about a government that is accommodating the youth, now we come to in terms of policy framework. Every government, when it comes to implementing anything that touches on, let's say how funds will be distributed, how laws will be implemented, then here comes things to do with policy framework that are being put in place, especially to affect the youth. As a legal brain, what are some of the areas you think the government should come to people like you and hear what you have to add on that, as opposed to just sitting in a boardroom and deciding we think this is what is best for the youth?
The problem is practicability of the policies. And why do you have a problem of practicability? Is because of lack of involvement. As a country, we lack a legislation, a law called Public Participation Bill, and that's why you see a lot of government bills and policies have been struck off by the court for lack of public participation. And the government, and in this sense I mean Parliament, has been unable to pass that legislation on public participation because it's going to tie them down. There are laws that you see how Parliament has been in a half to pass them, that favor them. For instance, the Political Parties Bill. You saw how it was passed on 24th December, even till midnight. They debated that till midnight. But issues, for instance, issues to do with that gender rule, for the longest time they've never been passed. Issues to do with young people, they are not passed. But there's steps that have been made towards that end. What I want to see is a situation whereby we have young people and key stakeholders being involved, and not just being involved at the point of public participation, the point of collection of their views, but being involved in the point of implementation, being involved in the point of monitoring and evaluation, seeing to it that indeed we set these funds at the youth fund, and indeed it's the young people who've been able to benefit. The other problem that young people face is lack of information. You see, the government says they've published the Gazette notices, where the information is present in the Gazette notices. I mean, I doubt people in Turkana can get access to the Gazette notice, and as much as it's online. Why shouldn't the government be able to transform its way of reaching out to people? For instance, you realize a lot of young people are on social media. Why does the government tweet and say there is public participation for passage of this bill at Taifa Hall or whatever? Why don't you see such updates on Twitter or on social media platforms of the government, calling on the young people to come and be involved in policy making processes, in legislation making processes, because the government has not been able to tailor-make their approaches to the youth problem to suit the young people at this stage. We have a lot of, I don't want to say backward, but we have a lot of rigid mechanisms of reaching out to young people, and that's what I want to see it being transformed, to see to it that it has been tailor-made to suit the young person of today.
Now, Michael, Power 254, you are big on issues that deal with the youth. Every day you are on ground handling these issues, right? Now, we talk about policies, so that they need to go to Parliament, they need to go to policymakers and make sure that they are actually passed. But when these public participation that now it seems to be a tough nut to crack as much as it's in the law, what are you doing in ensuring that the youth get to participate in this process, even when there is, say, no goodwill in ensuring that that is effective?
Well, let me just add something to what Collins was talking about, because we might lose it. The other challenge that the youth face, the unemployment issue, is also access to capital, which he alluded to. Yeah, but that is also one thing that we need to really take into consideration moving forward. But to answer your question, one of the things that we've noticed as Power 254, in fact, last year we did a research on youth participation in social accountability processes, and the results were as we expected. There's very low youth involvement, and one of the reasons that that came up very strongly, Collins has alluded to it, lack of information, because this information is shared in mediums that the youth do not ordinarily use, like newspapers. how many percentage of young people read newspapers nowadays? Even I don't. I've already migrated to the e-newspaper. So yeah, lack of information. And then the other issue was that the youth felt that even when they do participate, that their issues will not be taken into consideration. Like it's already pre-decided what will pass or what will not pass. And mostly what passes is not what the youth want. And then the other reason was because some of this information is released late intentionally.
Okay.
So that by the time you realize there's a public participation, you have very little time to organize yourself. And you know, these politicians, like Colin said, they do not want young people who are woke, because they know when the youth are active citizens, then we will put them, we will hold them accountable. So you find that even though the Public Participation Act clearly states that whenever there's a public participation forum, the information should be released at least 2 weeks earlier, or a week at the very latest. People get this information a day too, or 2 days too. And even when they get this information, the venue is very, a bit far off. So these are some of the reasons that we were able to bring out from the research. But there's also another one, that this is now among the youth themselves. I think we also need to self-introspect. We have a very small number of youth are interested in politics or issues of social accountability. I think we have a generation that doesn't really recognize how serious governance is and what it means to their daily lives. The number of young people who are, I would say, politically I'm avoiding to use the opposite of politically ignorant.
Politically woke.
Yeah, politically woke is very few. And that is the number that, as Power 254, we are really trying to build that. When we hold public forums with the young people, we explain how governance affects the rent that they pay, the price of unga, those basics that touch on their lives, the data bundles that we are very good at purchasing, that politics basically controls how you will live, basically. So it's important for them to be involved. So we've been having those number of public forums just to create that awareness that it is important for us to participate, because it is in participation that we are able to also influence what comes out. And unfortunately, and this is now an indictment to the Kenyan youth, it is very low, but we are trying. Civil society organizations like Power 254 and the youth serving organization that we are part of are trying to change that narrative. We want to get young people involved in governance at a very early age, so that we have very active citizens moving forward. Okay,
and I think on that note, let's take a short commercial break. When we come back, let's talk matters to do with politics, how politics affect the Kenyan youth, how even as we go into the elections, we realize that voter registration apathy was witnessed when IEBC was registering new voters, how that might affect the elections moving forward, and how the youth need to engage themselves in matters politics. Like Michael has said, it affects them whether they like it or not. Let's take a short commercial break. When we come back, we dig deeper, including the August 9th general elections. We'll be back in a few.